Hopefully you'll see that God was not wrong in getting you to sing those songs, getting us to sing those songs, Suzanne. So Ben, how are we? We're there? Just waiting for things to happen there. Hopefully they're working. We've had a little bit of a battle with technical things, actually with passwords and things today. We're good? We're on. Well, promised we'd start this new series. I'm quite excited by it, called Into the Deep, looking at going in deep with God and getting to the heart of God. This comes out of some of my study, and I'm quite excited by the idea of this, and my hope is that it'll encourage you to go deeper with God, to really go deeper. Today I want to particularly talk about experiencing God. Experiencing God. How do we experience God? What happens? What are the ways that we experience God, and what does it do to us? So my first experience of God, most of you will have heard me say this, but I'll say it because it's part of experiencing God, isn't it? My first experience of God that was visceral, I look back at my life when I was a child, and there were things that I could say, oh, God was there, but the first moment that I really knew I was sensing the presence of God was somewhere about 5 o'clock in the morning on Anzac Highway outside Kennards at Glandore, and walking back from a nightclub. Most of you know this story, and I was wondering what was the point of life and quizzing God because I'd worked out in my little head that God must be real, and I sort of yelled to him, if you're real, show yourself, expecting nothing. But I didn't get nothing. And that's what's so good, isn't it? This is the experience of God. God hit me with a beam of light and love. And that's the only way I can describe it. And I was utterly shocked. So that was a great experience. And I know most people say, wow, you had a great experience. And I look, and there's only one experience I know like it, and that was in the Bible. A guy named Paul had a similar sort of thing. He was knocked off his horse. I was just stopped in my tracks, and I just promised not to drink for a week. Paul totally changed his whole life in a second, but it did change my life, really. But it was an amazing experience, but it's not really enough. It was a thing that changed my trajectory, but I can't say that it sustained my trajectory. Is that fair? Certainly changed it, but it hasn't sustained it. One of the most important things, I think, is the continual experience of God. You can experience God once, but if you just rely on that for the rest of your life, I think you're going to have some trouble. Partly because that's not what a relationship with God is it? Imagine if you married someone, you had this wonderful first night, and then you never were intimate ever again. Now, some people think that's how marriage is. It's not, is it? That's not a marriage. It's not a relationship. If you become friends with someone, have the great day having friends with them, and never speak to them again, they're not really friends, are you? So I want to look at experiencing God and continually experiencing God. I'm going to look at a piece of scripture that I've always thought was really weird. And I've always looked at it and gone, oh, that's a bit wacky, I don't really understand it. But interestingly, when you start reading it, certainly some of the early Christians, they seem to understand it, and understand it well. And I want to, in the next little bit of time, unpack some of that over the next few weeks, and even maybe might even go into, we're away on holidays for a couple of weeks, we'll go into a bit of time after that too. But this is the one I want to look at. Does anyone know what that's a picture of? Can you think what it might be a picture of? I like these old pictures. This is a Cyrillic picture, Orthodox.
Is that the transfiguration where Jesus and Moses and Elijah?
Yes, it is. It's the transfiguration, if those, and for those online maybe didn't hear John. It's with Jesus, Moses and Elijah. Interesting. Which one do you think is which? So Moses is on the... In the red, you're right. Moses is in the red. I would have picked Moses as the other one.
It's in the Cyrillic.
Yeah, I know. So you know Cyrillic. All right, there you go. So I know the Cyrillic too, and so I could work it out.
He's holding something that looks like a tablet.
He is holding a tablet. That's a better thing. That's for the rest of us who don't know Cyrillic. And yes, it's Moises, isn't it? It says there, Moses. So Moses and Elijah meet Jesus up the mountain, and what happens to Jesus? He shines, doesn't he? So let's have a look at this story. It's such a weird story because it's nothing like anything else in the rest of the Gospels, is it? Jesus is this very earthy sort of guy that connects with people that's, you know, very real. In fact, people don't even know what he looks like and they can't tell if it's him some of the time. And then suddenly this weird thing happens, doesn't it? So let's have a look. So this one's from Matthew 17. There's 3 stories of it. They're very similar. Some differences. I'm choosing the one from Matthew. It says, after 6 days, Jesus took Peter, James, and his brother John and brought them up a high mountain alone. He was transformed before them. His face lit up as the sun and his clothes became white as light. That's pretty bizarre, isn't it? Imagine that. I tried to get my head around how this would work. And of course, they're going up a mountain. There's an interesting thing for you, Suzanne, talking about mountains going up. They're going up a mountain, and he's leading them up a mountain. So what would it have been like? You'd think they'd be trailing behind, wouldn't you? You'd be trudging up the mountain. It wouldn't be some nice ordered thing. In my head, I've always had it as a nice ordered thing, but it wouldn't be, would it? You're walking up a mountain, and then suddenly the guy that you're following starts to shine like the sun. Imagine that. That's quite stunning, isn't it? Clothes became white as light, and behold, Moses and Elijah appeared to him, speaking with him. That's even weirder, isn't it? You're walking up this mountain, you're probably tired, you're puffing out of breath a bit, because it's up a mountain, and suddenly he starts to shine, and Moses and Elijah appear. What would you do? It's a bit of a shocking thing, isn't it? Stunning thing to suddenly see. What's that?
How would they know?
How would they know it's Moses and Elijah? I don't know. Maybe Jesus told them after it's Moses and Elijah, because they wouldn't know what they looked like, would they? How would you know what Moses and Elijah looked at when they were thousands of years before you, or 1,000 years before you? That's quite bizarre, isn't it?
Peter seemed to know.
Peter seemed to know. Yes, he did.
Maybe he could read Cyrillic.
No, he can read Cyrillic, yes. Thank you, Chris. For those online, Chris said maybe he can read Cyrillic. No, that's not the case, obviously, but Cyrillic didn't exist yet. It wasn't invented yet. But anyway, Peter spoke up and said to Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tents here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah. Is that a fair thing to do? I don't know. I think Peter's saying something because he has to say something. Yeah. So, how do you think Jesus reacts? The hard thing is Jesus doesn't react. Someone else reacts. While he was still speaking, so Peter's still speaking, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and a voice from the cloud said, "This is my son, the beloved. In him I am well pleased. Listen to him." That's harsh, isn't it? You're talking, and then suddenly the voice of God comes and says, "Shut up, listen to my son." That would be the most embarrassing takedown, wouldn't it, really? The voice of God has shut you up. Wow. I find that stunning. The disciples fell on their faces, fearing exceedingly. You would a bit, wouldn't you? Wow. Jesus came, having touched them, said, "Rise and do not fear." Lifting their eyes, they saw no one but Jesus alone. And coming down from the mountain, Jesus instructed them, saying, "Do not tell of the vision until the Son of Man is raised from the dead." I find that last bit fascinating. Don't tell anyone about this until the Son of Man is raised from the dead. Did they understand that the Son of Man was going to be raised from the dead? No, they didn't have a clue. He said it to them over and over and over again. He said, "I have to die and I'm going to rise from the dead," and they were totally confused by it. Peter says, "No, it can't happen to you, Lord, no way." And he says, "Get behind me, Satan," doesn't he? So Peter puts his foot in his mouth a few times, doesn't he? That's just his way, and I love that he does that because it helps us, doesn't it? That we can do that, and it's okay. You can still lead the whole church. No, not really. But, you can still live life in God. So when I look at this, my concentration is usually on Peter. And it makes sense, doesn't it? Or a little bit on, why he would speak to Moses and Elijah. Why do you think he spoke to Moses and Elijah? Oh, I've got you thinking. I can tell you what the church has said most of the time throughout its history. Moses represents the law, and Elijah represents the prophets. And that's fair, isn't it? You have the law and the prophets. And Jesus always talks about the law and the prophets, doesn't he? He talks about love the Lord your God with all your heart, mind and soul, love your neighbour as yourself. And he says, all the law and prophets hang on these two commands. So it was very much an idea. There was the law. The law was the first 5 books, which Moses meant to have written. We know he didn't write all of it because it talks about his death in the last one. So he mustn't have written that bit. But, he wrote chunks of it. And then there's all these history things and prophecies, and they're all called the prophets, that whole thing. And Elijah is considered the great prophet, and Moses is the great one of the first lot. But I don't think that's why they're here. I think it's part of it. But actually, I think the reason they're here in this story is because it connects with God's movements, the experience of God in the Old Testament. Which is interesting, isn't it? I think it connects with the experience of God in the Old Testament. And Peter, James and John would have been looking and going, of course it's these guys. We're going to have a look at a little bit why. Why would it be, of course, these guys? So, I've got another story I want to look at. What do you think this one is? What's that?
The 10 Commandments.
10 Commandments. That's Moses receiving the 10 Commandments. That's right. Again, I'm going for the sort of orthodox look there. It's a good look, and I like these pictures. It also means I can get them for free because they're so old, which is nice, isn't it? So, this is from Exodus 24, 15 to 18. It said, "And Moses went up the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. The glory of Yahweh dwelled upon Mount Sinai." For those that don't know, many modern versions say the Lord there, but the word that's there is likely the word Yahweh, which is the name of God, which sort of just means He is. That's the name that's there. So I've translated this from the Hebrew, so just went with Yahweh. The glory of Yahweh dwelt upon Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it 6 days. And he called to Moses on the 7th day from the midst of the cloud. I've read this lots of times, and I never realized that God didn't even speak to him until the 7th day. But you go up the mountain, you're expecting to hear from God straight away, aren't you? He was there 6 days waiting. That's quite stunning, isn't it? I never saw that before I had to do this. Bizarre. And the vision of the glory of Yahweh was as fire consuming on the top of the mountain to the eyes of the sons of Israel. That's a bit clunky. I've almost transliterated it, so I'm sorry about that. Basically, the glory of God on top of the mountain looked like fire to those that are on the ground watching, the sons of Israel. And Moses entered the midst of the cloud and went up the mountain, and Moses was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights. Do you think this is connected a little with the Transfiguration? What's some similarities there?
On the mountain,
Mountain. What else?
meeting God.
Meeting God. What else is there? Well, there seems to be a bit of that. The glory and the fire and the consuming fire, the light.
Glory of God. God's revealing himself in a way.
He is. I think there's the cloud. Wasn't there? There was the cloud, there's the cloud again. See, when Peter, James and John are there, they knew these stories off by heart because when they were little boys, they had to learn them. That's part of being a young Jewish person. They would have been going, oh my goodness, this is what happened back then. Connections. Thing is, this isn't all. I've got another little bit. I've only taken snippets, and I want to actually, in the next few weeks, have a deeper look at Moses' journey. This is from Exodus 33, 18 to 19, and 34, 30. It says, and he, Moses, said, please show me your glory. And he, Yahweh, I put it in brackets there because it just says he each time, he said, I will make all my goodness pass before your face, and I will call the name of Yahweh before you, and behold, I will be gracious to whom I will be gracious, and have mercy on whom I have mercy. That's an interesting little piece, isn't it? And then it says this. This is a long way after, but it's the end of the story. And Aaron and all the sons of Israel saw Moses, and behold, the skin of his face shone, and they were afraid to come near him. You're seeing some things like the Transfiguration here. Yeah, there are. We see Moses shining now, don't we? So he's gone up the mountain to meet God again. So this is another time up the mountain. And he comes back down and he's shining like Jesus did and like he did when Jesus met him. The other thing that's interesting there is, and I haven't put in the fuller one, we'll look at it next week, God actually reveals himself fully to Moses there by saying who he is. Did God do that in the Transfiguration? He says, this is my son, doesn't he? My beloved, in whom I trust. In whom I've lost, yeah, and well pleased. Listen to him. He says, this is God here. Here he says, this is God to Moses. We're going to look at what he says about that soon. So it's very similar, isn't it? The picture of the Transfiguration is very Old Testament. Has a lot of stuff that's the same. They go up a mountain, there's cloud, there's shining, there's a shining face, there's God revealing himself, his truth, which is pretty good, isn't it? There's something to this going up mountains, isn't there? I know for me, back when I pastored my first church that I pastored, then there was a period there, and I loved this time, when the start of my working week, which was Tuesday, I'd take work Sunday, I'd take Monday off, and Tuesday was the start of my working week. But whenever I could, which was most weeks, which was good, my first thing I would do Tuesday morning was drive up the hills, this spot called Prayer Mountain. You know about it, don't you, Di? And I would spend my Tuesday morning praying with God, because that was my job. It was a good job to have. First bit. It often got interrupted by other people's desires for meetings and things, but if I could hold it off, I would. But it was a wonderful time. To the point that I remember I used to drive up there and have some music on, and I'd start the drive into the road that led to it, and suddenly I'd feel the presence of God really strongly. It's like, oh, here I am. It's the space. It's like going up into the cloud. And sometimes it was literally going up into the cloud too, which was lovely. Magnificent thing. That was a good experience to have. So I've got a little bit of understanding of Moses going up there regularly. Not really the same. I don't think I ever came back shining, did I? No, no one saw me shining. Oh. I don't know how you deal with that in this modern day. That'd be interesting, wouldn't it? Yes. So we see Moses. Moses is there for a good reason, isn't it? Because he's had this experience. And very much the experience of knowing God. And Moses again meets God on the mountain, doesn't he, in meeting Jesus. Did Elijah have a similar experience?
Yep.
Lou says, yep. Only because I would do a sermon like this and make sure it happened, wouldn't I?
Well, no, he was looking for God in
Let's have a look.
the wind and the...
So here's another picture. This is Elijah, isn't it? And what's the little bird in the corner? A raven. It is a raven. It doesn't look much like a raven. It looks like a pigeon, a dark pigeon to me. But it is meant to be a raven. And the ravens fed Moses when he was out in the desert. Elijah. Sorry, I said the wrong name, didn't I? Fed Elijah. Thank you very much. Out in the desert. And then the feeding gave him strength to go up the mountain. He was told, go up the mountain, wasn't he? And this is what happened on the mountain. Let's have a look. And he said, go out and stand on the mountain before Yahweh. And behold, Yahweh passed before him. We've heard that before, haven't we? Yeah. Yahweh passed before Moses, didn't he? Now Yahweh's passing before Elijah. And a great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before Yahweh. That is stunning. Have you ever seen a wind break rocks? I haven't. Rocks are pretty hard. This is a stunning wind, isn't it? Now, it could have flung a rock into a rock and it exploded, maybe. But it's saying that the wind was breaking. It's a pretty strong wind, quite scary. Great and strong wind tore the mountains and broke the rocks in pieces before Yahweh. But Yahweh was not in the wind. Oh, that's interesting, isn't it? And after the wind, an earthquake. Has any of you been through an earthquake?
Yes.
I know you have. You were with me in it. We've been through. Most of you know that we've said this before, but it's interesting for those that don't know that Lou and I survived Australia's biggest earthquake. I say survived it. I did get hit on the head by some plastic thing falling from the top of the reject store shop. But it wasn't too dangerous for it. It was actually, the earthquake itself was off the shore of Broome. We were in Broome. But it did shake the place pretty heavily. And when we went to run outside the building, and people that were outside said to us, the whole ground, you could see it moving and the cars moving up and down. That'd be stunning to see, wouldn't it? We didn't see that, we just felt the thing inside. Earthquakes are pretty intense, quite scary. I think the scarier bit was the one in the middle of the night, the aftershock that came through and woke us all up. We were there with Ben and Rachel, our youngest two, at the time. So you'd think God would be in something that great, wouldn't you? God will be in something powerful and amazing. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But Yahweh was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake was a fire. Now, I haven't been through a real fire. I've been through small fires, seen them around, but I've seen what bushfire does. That's pretty intense, isn't it? These are intense things happening. But Yahweh was not in the fire. And after the fire, a still, small voice. Was Yahweh in that voice? Yeah, he was. Those that know the story, God speaks to him, and we're going to talk about that in a few weeks. Some of the beautiful things about that and what God says and what it says to us. I know for me, I have been through a few weird experiences that people would say are like the earthquake. Probably the biggest one was when I was in Papua New Guinea and a meteor came across and tore up in front of us, lit up the whole sky. And then a little bit later we heard boom, 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 it hitting the ground. It actually hit the ocean on the other side of the Owen Stanley Ranges. We were there, for those that know that. Quite incredible. I was in a youth camp and they all ran to me saying, what's happening? Is this God coming? No, it's a meteor. It's pretty impressive, pretty good to watch, and it was the biggest I've ever seen. And truthfully, I've seen them, a little dart. This was a big thing strafing across the sky, making a lot of brightness, shining everywhere. But it doesn't mean that God's in them, does it? Yeah. Sometimes, I think for us, we expect God to be in the big things in life and in doing the right things, particularly church. God's in there, isn't he? He is. Many years ago, when I was pastoring, again, my first church, I had a day and I was going off to hike some of the Hyson Trail and be with God. was my day. I went to a place called World's End. Does anyone know where World's End is? Oh, Lou does, because I've taken her there, to the end of the world. It's sort of just to the east and south of Burra. It's called World's End, genuinely. It's got a gorge there, it's quite nice. But I was hiking the Hyacinth Trail through that region. And my plan was to pray deeply about all the needs in the church and all the things like that. And that's what I was going to do as I was walking. And I started the walk, because these are important things, aren't they? And I started the walk and I'm trying to pray, and it just was like heaven was solid and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I was praying, I'm praying really important things, come on, and it just was dead. And I was sort of a bit exasperated. It was only the early part of the walk, but what's going on? Then I got a still small voice. And it said, just be with me. So, oh wow. All right. So I continued to walk along and just enjoy the presence of God. I don't think I prayed for anything in the end, but it was a wonderful, wonderful day with God. See, our big things that we think are there, sometimes God's saying, no, stop.